All right, let's welcome in this week's guest, Taylor Rooks. Taylor, thanks so much for joining Tommy and I.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I have been looking forward to this. I always go on Twitter and I see everybody on the podcast. So now I'm happy that I get to be on
We've been saving it. This is a big one for us too.
Yes.
No, I'm looking forward to it.
We decided like 2 months ago, we were like, we got to get Taylor on. We got to get Taylor on. And it was just, a lot's been happening in the world. Like it's not that we're putting you off. It's not we're putting you off.
I believe you. It's okay.
I want to jump right into some NBA stuff. So if you followed along over the last few days, I think there's a push from a group of players, not all the players, but a group of players who are kind of leaning towards wanting to sit out the season. In what they're saying is it's going to be a distraction from the movement, from the social justice movement that's happening all over the country right now. And I just wanted to I wanted to start right there, and let's get your thoughts on it. Tommy, I want you to chime in as well, because I think there's a lot to sort of talk about on this.
For sure. I want to start off by saying I truly don't know which side I'm on yet in terms of playing or not playing. I think I'm leaning towards understanding the not playing aspect more, because for me, the answer is kind of in the question, right? Like the reason we want the NBA to come back is so that we can talk about it and so that it can give us something to do. So if the player's point is that it's going to draw away from the things we should be talking about and things we should be doing, you kind of inherently proved their point by wanting the NBA to return, I also think there is validity to the idea that a ton of people could lose money, which would then take revenue from Black communities, Black families, the advancement of Black people. I totally get that point. But I also think not playing can help with the long game, which is you're going to have to pay us because we're the product. The CBA is going to be redone regardless of if you play or not. Like there's so many different things that go along with it, but I think it makes sense to not play. I think it's really been cool to see players take such a strict and direct stance on their beliefs, something that we haven't seen in a long time. But when it comes down to it, what I think is going to happen is basketball will happen. Some people just won't be there.
Well, what I would add to that also, I thought that was really, really well said.
Really well said. Yeah.
But what I would add to that also is COVID has not gone away. And not only is it not going away, it is going up significantly in Arizona, it's going up significantly in Texas, and it's going up significantly in Florida, particularly in the county where this bubble is going to exist. And so
bubble.
Yes, we've JJ and I have talked about this. We talked about it with a bunch of players recently on the show. Like the NBA, I'm sure they know what they're doing when it comes to this stuff, but it's also you're putting a calculated risk for not just all of the players, but everybody in the traveling party by entering yourself into a situation like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so weird how, coronavirus has become kind of in the dark. Like even when I was talking to some of the players about the call, they're like, the call lasted for about 2 hours, but over an hour was only about the social justice movement. Like Corona almost became like an afterthought. So I do think it is very important to understand people are dying from this. It is still a thing that needs to be put into consideration about playing or not playing. We've seen now some NFL players have it. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen if in the bubble a player gets corona. I mean, how are we gonna handle that? I think I wish humans were better at having split focus, being able to put a lot of attention onto two things. Like corona needs to be taken very, very seriously. And it's like we're kind of forgetting it. And I think I'm guilty of forgetting about it in a lot of ways too.
What's wild to me is a hypothetical that you're in the Western Conference Finals and the series is tied 2-2 and LeBron tests positive for coronavirus.
I know.
And he's got a quarantine for 10 days and can't play the rest of the series. And potentially, if the Lakers somehow won without him, maybe game 1 or game 2 of the finals.
Yeah.
Those are the scenarios where I'm like, is it even worth going back for the basketball product? Obviously, the question is it worth going back for our health? That's valid. is it worth going back for the basketball product?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, is it going to even be good basketball? And if guys start dropping like flies, you know, how are we going to reconcile with that if it's star players?
Yeah. And that's kind of twofold, because also, what if some very meaningful impact players decide they just don't want to go down there? So the team that wins, was it even really the competition that it should have been? Like, what's the asterisk going to be on the championship? You know, we always talk about an asterisk, but this is an actual asterisk, like, because you might not even be playing the team as advertised, you know? So
sure,
what's the competition going to be getting there? A, and B, I'm of the belief, and this not just for this is for life. If we're having to make so many adjustments to make something work, should we be doing it? If I'm in a relationship with a dude and I got to every day be like, we can't do this and we can do this, and when we do that, I don't like when you do this because it doesn't work for me, I probably shouldn't be with this person. Like, how many adaptations do I need to make for it to fit my life and for it to be healthy for me? So for the NBA, it's the same thing. Like, this is not a healthy relationship, and we probably need to get out of it.
Too hard.
So, yeah, we're trying so hard to kind of get this to go and work. And I just don't know if that clearly means it's not safe. And we're trying to make something safe that we probably don't have any control over.
Taylor, let me ask you a question about the geography of this country. Because right now you're in Atlanta and you're from Atlanta. And Atlanta is, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but Atlanta has basically been open for almost this whole time. I mean, there was like a period for like 3 weeks where Georgia closed, but like it did not close like New York did, or like California did, or like some of the other places. And like what we're starting to see with like a lot of the sports in this country is it's becoming, in terms of like getting back to quote unquote normal, is it's becoming like a little bit of a geographical thing where it's like college football is like happening in the fall. No one has had any question about whether it's happening. It's like, it's straight up happening. The question is whether there's going to be fans. From my understanding, the NFL is also happening, unless there's something that has changed that we just don't know about. And so there is, I guess, a question of, you know, the NBA, the players are obviously a lot more sort of outspoken politically than in other leagues, and the fan bases may be sort of different demographically and geographically and everything like that. But do you think it is tough for the league for like these other sports to be going on, but yet the NBA to not happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you're right. They're just run so differently that I don't really think the NBA not happening would affect the NFL not happening, nor college football happening. But I will say I was having a conversation with one of my friends about this whole play or not play thing. And their argument was like, okay, if the NBA doesn't play, we're later going to be talking about the NFL. But then also, with the NBA start again in December, like this fight is still going to be happening at the end of the year and next year and probably the year after that. But I don't know if the NFL would be affected by the NBA not playing. I know that I haven't talked to one NFL player that says they don't want to play.
Why do you think, JJ, why do you think that is? Why do you think this is happening with NBA players and not players in other sports?
I think a lot of it has to do with the people that are at the leadership positions amongst players and the people that are in leadership positions at the league office. Adam Silver has given us a lot of leeway to be outspoken about all things. And when you have players, you know, even going back all the way to 2010 when LeBron makes the decision, like our league has moved to empower Black athletes to be outspoken. And I think you're seeing that. I want to go back to a couple things. First of all, Taylor, the relationship analogy, you nailed it. You nailed it. Because I think for a lot of players, myself included, look, we want to play basketball. We want to finish the season. You want to have a loving relationship. Mm-hmm. You want to take care of your partner. But if your partner is waking you up every morning by throwing cold water on your face, you're going to say, maybe I don't want to be in this relationship.
Yeah.
And so for some of this is like, well, yeah, like it's a lot of inconvenience. You know, it's not even, I'm not saying like the standards of living are terrible, but it's such an adjustment to say, well, you can't leave the bubble and no one can come in the bubble and you've got to be away from your family. And by the way, we're going to test you every other day for coronavirus. And by the way, there's this whole other movement happening in the country, which directly affects the majority of your players' communities. So you do all that together and it's like, oh, well, yeah, of course we're a little hesitant about what's going on. So when I first heard about this call last week, I think my knee-jerk reaction was like, oh no, we're playing. Like, we're going to play. But then I got some notes from the first call and I was on the second call on Friday. And there's really some validity to a lot of the things guys are saying. I think my counter argument, and there were a lot of players that expressed this on the call Friday, was that number one, if we go to Orlando, then we have an opportunity to control the message and in some ways potentially further the movement. Number two, the repercussions of not playing potentially looks like not having a season next season even. Because again, as you said, ripping up and doing a new CBA, if we show up to Orlando is one thing, ripping up and doing a new CBA, if we don't show up is something else entirely. So there's all these, layers to this conversation. And I don't necessarily think anyone's right and anyone's wrong in this. Does that make sense?
For sure. And I agree. I think
and one of the things expressed on the call too, and look, Shams was on the call clearly because he quoted everybody.
He had them quotes the minute that call.
Verbatim. I'm reading this article and I'm like, Shams was on the call.
I'm talking to everybody that I haven't talked to get from information. I'm like, y'all can send me the link? If one person gonna be on the call.
I know there was at least four guys on the call that were not NBA players. I know that. Yeah. For sure. But one of the things expressed one of the things expressed by some of the younger guys was like, we're all sort of in different places in our careers. And so for older players who have made, $200 million versus a younger guy who's, got his rookie deal and is now on a minimum contract, he needs to play. Like, he's got to play. For some young guys who maybe developmentally can't afford to take a year and a half off of basketball, those guys need to play. I mean, selfishly for me, if we don't play this season and we don't play next season, I don't know if I'll ever play basketball again.
Yeah.
So there's all these different layers to it.
Real concerns. And you're right. I don't think that one person is right nor one person is wrong. And I always think about in the thick of Kaepernick kneeling, I was talking to a football player and I was like, well, if I played football, I would kneel. And I was like, because I feel like I have a responsibility. And he was like, I don't kneel because I have a responsibility. Meaning I gotta help my family. I gotta stay in the league. I need the money. And so it's really just about differing responsibilities and how sometimes those two things can clash. And so I don't think someone is right nor wrong if they decide they want to play or not play for this injustice. The only thing that I caution is sometimes we we put too much weight into symbols, and really symbols don't mean anything. So if we're going to go to Orlando and every player is going to wear a shirt that says Black Lives Matter, that's not doing anything, if we're being totally honest. Yeah. So that cannot be the solution that everybody comes up to amplify this movement. It can't be a moment in the beginning. It can't be a mention in an interview. Like, there would have to be a dedicated, specific initiative to actually bring some type of real awareness to this, because it's more like we've already done the whole thing of athletes talking about Black people not needing to be killed by the police. We saw that at the ESPYs. We saw that when LeBron and Chris, we've done the Chris Paul, LeBron, Dwayne Wade stand up. And where are we now? So I sometimes think that talking is the easy way out. And I sometimes think things like putting on a shirt is the easy way out. And I'm not saying that not playing is the best way, but I think it's closer to something that would amplify a movement that needs to stay in the forefront. It can't just be this little thing. And I have suggested to a couple players, what if the option isn't necessarily giving up the platform as much as it is giving away the platform, right? Like, what can you do in the time that a game would be on and say, you know what, we're not going to play this day because this day's time slot needs to be dedicated to this. And maybe making that entire thing about that, because you are right, there is a platform, but it can't be as small as going there and talking about it, because talking doesn't do anything.
Well, I think it's a unique opportunity because it's one of the only times where you're going to have the majority of the NBA players in one place at one time. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I haven't been to many league meetings when we do our annual meeting or, NBPA meeting. I did go to the one when we voted in Michelle, because that was a big, change for us. And that was probably our best turnout we ever had at a meeting. Yeah. And I went to a couple at All-Star break, but, this is an opportunity for that. But the other thing I would say is, like, it seems to me like, given the sort of the access and the network that the league has, that Adam has, that our owners have, and forming some sort of partnership or initiative with players to actually like push for some real things to happen, either in, criminal justice reform or in Black communities. Like, I think that's the most valid thing that I've seen, besides just taking a stand or, putting a t-shirt on. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, for sure. Agree. And I hope that those calls can lead to a laid out action plan, because it needs, because everybody says, this only works if we do things to make change, but like no one is saying like what those things are. I'm actually know what I mean, me too. Like, I don't know what exactly those things can be for the players to do, but it's the change is in defining the things and not just using the umbrella term of like, we got to figure out what things we're going to do. This only works if we focus on things. Like, no, what are they, and how can we move forward to doing them? And so hopefully the next call, because I know that the call that happened on Monday was only union, and some people were kind of upset about that. But the next call that encompasses everybody, I hope it's focused on what the issue is and the things that we can do to address that, because that's really what's really important. And I know I've heard from multiple people that Melo was somebody on the call that was really saying, like, keeping everybody on track and saying we got to focus on what those things are, but we need a call that's dedicated to just that and defining it.
There really is not there's not a moment where the players will have more leverage than this. And so it's important to really, to your point, Taylor, to figure out what those things are and get them, because you're probably going to be able to do that. My question for both you guys is, which is off the NBA for a second. Did you follow this thing with the kid from Oklahoma State and Gundy and Mike Gundy yesterday? So
in that no apology.
Yeah. And the whole thing, like, it like blew up and then went away in like 5 hours. But basically, for the listeners who don't know what happened, Mike Gundy, the coach of Oklahoma State, was pictured wearing an OAN t-shirt. OAN is this horrible, like, I don't even know. It's like Trump propaganda network, basically.
1,000%.
Yeah. And he was pictured wearing the shirt. And what's the guy's name, Taylor? The running back's name?
It's like Chubba. I'm going to say it wrong, but it's like Chubba something. Everyone gets his name wrong, but his first name's like Chubba.
And he's a Heisman candidate. He's like one of the best running backs in the country. And he basically tweeted, like, this is not acceptable. Oklahoma State needs to change things quick. And clearly damage control happened, and they were in a video together later that day, sort of like, but to your point, one of them apologized and the other one didn't, and the one who did not was the coach. But that's a separate conversation. What I'm wondering is, like, is this the window for college athletes to be like, you guys are paying us?
Yeah, but I think a lot of it is if it's done correctly and if they realize that it doesn't exist without them. One thing I have kind of realized just through life, right, is historically Black people, especially when it comes to sports, have been the product, and they have been the thing that drives it and makes it successful. They have the value. There would be a large shift in everything if Black people realized their value existed, even if it lost its proximity to whiteness. But so many of us have felt like the thing that's paramount, or the thing that's great, is the thing that white people are doing. That's for a variety of reasons, history, what we see, the media. But I just think if everyone realized that you stay you and your talent stays you regardless of who is promoting it, there would be a totally big shift, which is one of the reasons why I think it's intriguing to think about a Black athlete going to an HBCU. Because you're still going to be the number one player, whether you're playing a North Carolina A&T or whether you're playing at Duke, So I think these conversations are important. And when it comes to paying the athletes, like literally, it's as simple as this. If every single college athlete said, we're not going to play unless you pay us, they'd be paid the next week. That's just the truth. But there's no unity in it. And I don't know if everybody can stand 10 toes down and stick with that. And like I said, I'm not saying you're wrong if you don't. But I'm saying that is the reality of the situation. Like they need you to keep going. They will lose more money by you sitting out and not playing than by them deciding to pay you. And that's just the truth.
Yeah, there's been some breakdowns that I've seen on some of the more profitable college football and college basketball teams. If they were to let's just say like have a 50-50 split, like the NBA does or something like that. And I mean, they can afford to pay the average player real money. I mean, there's enough money in the system. There's some schools, by the way, that these endowments are set up. Their athletic department endowments are set up that they actually have to spend the money every few years. So that's why you see, I'm not going to name the teams, but certain universities get like brand new football locker rooms every 3 years with all the bells and whistles, which is great for recruiting. And it's great for all the alumni to say we have this great football program. But I think that money could be better well spent by paying the people that are playing.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Seems kind of logical to me. I don't know.
I'm with you on that, but we have common sense. So
yeah. Hey, you mentioned something earlier about, goodness and whiteness. And you and I talked yesterday for a thing you're doing for Bleacher Report. And you mentioned this, and I kind of shook my head because I was like literally in utter disbelief at how you described this notion of this desire of like, I'm only good if I can sort of appropriate whiteness. I think that's kind of how I took it. Can you just kind of describe that idea?
Yeah. I started really thinking heavily about it when I went to a discussion that Lena Waithe was having about the movie Queen and Slim. And there's a line in the movie where one of the characters is saying they want to be like excellent at something or great at something. And she goes, why have Black people always got to be great? Like, why can't we just be? And one thing that Lena was talking about is Black excellence in a lot of ways hurts us because it is the idea that we have to be phenomenal in order to justify the space that we take up. And I thought to myself, you know what? In so many ways, that's true because I've never heard, I'm not saying this doesn't exist, but I've never heard a white person be like, oh no, I'm gonna be the best doctor, or like, I'm gonna be the best teacher. Like, I gotta be the best. Like, but Black people, whatever their profession is, they're like, I have to be so good at it because we feel like we have to because that elevates our status in the world. And I think they also feel like having their status elevated in the world will protect them from things like racism or cops or things like that. Like, it's all very ingrained and very subconscious, but it absolutely exists. And I hope for a world where Black people can be as good or as not good as they want to be, but still feel worth it. Because being able to be mediocre is a luxury. And that is a luxury that a lot of white people have that I would say most Black people do not have. I would even argue that a lot of mediocre white people fail up. And mediocre white people continue to be able to be in spaces that exact same level of Black person wouldn't be able to broach simply because they are a Black person. There's just so many things I think that come with being Black. When you talk about the relationship between like Blackness and whiteness, I think things that we see in the media are always a good representation of that. Like, I know growing up, the first time I saw a Black woman on TV talking about sports that wasn't light skinned, it was when I saw Pam Oliver, because we're always seeing like light skinned Black women with like little noses and like they have a very specific look. And for me, I'm like, I'm brown skinned. I got a huge nose. I got high cheekbones. Like I'm almost always wearing just like my natural hair. And that's very important because I never want to be inaccessible to the people that look like me. And I'm happy that we're seeing a shift now and embracing like that Blackness and knowing that it's really your power and one of the things that makes you valuable in the space.
It's unbelievable. Very well said. I wanted to ask you about something you tweeted the other day. Mm-hmm. So you tweeted something. I don't have the tweet in front of me, so I apologize.
Okay.
But and I actually, when you tweeted it out, I was like, oh, she's spot on. And then I started thinking to myself, like, how wrong is it that this isn't true? And basically your tweet said, basically, we need more Black voices in sports telling Black people's stories. Mm-hmm. And it seems so obvious, but can you just kind of, go into that a little bit and explain why?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that happens sometimes with these like sports panels is, and it happened, I'd probably say more in the past, we're definitely seeing a shift in the voices in sports now, but you'd have 4 white men talking about a topic that they had literally never experienced. And it ends up really being 4 people saying the exact same thing with a different face. Because sometimes when we talk about diversity, right? Yes, it's because of their color, but it's also diversity of thought and diversity of experience. So you need to have Black people a part of these panels and part of these discussions because they're going to understand it more. And it's going to also make for better discussion and really better television because you're getting a well-rounded perspective on a very crucial subject. I mean, having 4 white men on a panel talk about why or why not Colin Kaepernick should be kneeling is like a disgrace. I mean, or even think about having 4 men on a panel talking about domestic abuse in the NBA or NFL. You don't have one woman's voice. So it's so important. And I always tell people, I think one of the advantages I have when I'm interviewing is that I'm Black. I think the players feel a level of comfort and I feel like they can open up and it's something different than probably what they're used to. It really helps your content. And I just think you have to represent what you're doing. And if you're going to be a media entity that's covering sports, you need to reflect that in the people that work there. It's very, very important.
Yeah, you definitely have an ability to get people to just sort of let down their guard.
Oh, thank you.
Because you've talked about, I've read a couple articles, but you've talked about sort of, just asking uncomfortable questions and getting real answers out of people, mm-hmm. Which is hard to do. And it's one of the reasons, like, you do a podcast because hopefully people will come on with, just the thought beforehand. Okay, I'm going to go into this and let my guard down a little bit. So I wanted to kind of touch on that because I think the theme that I find again and again when I see you on social media or when I watch your videos is like you are humanizing other people, and most of the time you're humanizing Black athletes, which I think that does not happen enough at all.
No, for sure. I appreciate that. Seriously. And I agree it doesn't happen enough. And that was one of the goals I have with the show and really all of the interviews. And that's why I think the series that you were a part of yesterday is going to be so important because they just get to be them. And I always say for so many athletes, their persona kind of enters the room before they do. So you think you know them because you saw some clips, saw them on social media, and you're not even giving them a chance to create full, complete versions of themselves. And we don't just do that with athletes, we do that with people too. When we fill in the spaces that we don't know with what we think, and we don't even give them a chance to fill it in for us. So I want the interviews to feel like you're showing who you are in a way that comes from you, in a way that can be controlled. Like if you walk away from an interview that I did with somebody liking them or disliking them, I'm fine with that. I just want you to have made that decision because of what they showed you and not because of things that you think about them for absolutely no reason. And that's to me, the advantage of humanizing someone is the same way you decide if you like a friend or, someone you met on the street. Like it has to come from a real interaction. And I want the interviews to be like a vehicle to that.
Taylor, what's your best advice for like the 19-year-old you right now who's coming up?
Oh, break up with him. I'm just kidding.
I'm sensing a theme.
No, I'm kidding. But in all honesty, though, I would say I would tell 19-year-old Taylor that your life is going to be different. It's going to consist of a lot of sacrifice, but it's going to be very, very worth it. Like I always tell people, I feel like my life had to move very quickly. Like I graduated college. My first job was at the Big Ten Network. And then I was there for 2 years. I moved to New York and I worked at SNY. Then I left that and I got a show on Bleacher Report. I didn't really have time to like be a 20-year-old that got to do dumb shit, you know? And I wish I got to do a lot of dumb shit and I just didn't really get to. But I'm thankful for that. I'm not complaining. I'm very happy with how life happened. But I think sacrifice is important and knowing that there's always something bigger than you. So I would tell that to any person who wants to be in journalism. Like you really got to decide who you want to be in the space and make steps that all are aligned with that. I don't think this is a half in, half out type of thing. Like you got to make that decision and live in that. And that's probably what I
When did you figure that out?
Truly, I was that annoying kid that like asked a billion trillion questions. Like my mom was like, Taylor, you were born to ask people nosy questions because that was all you did. So I always knew I wanted to do something that had to do with people and questions, right? But my freshman year was when I was like, this is it. Like I'm putting my all into doing this. And I know I can be good at this as long as I work on it. And growing up, my parents told me that every day. Like if you put your mind to it, you can do it. And so I've always fully believed that. But freshman year, I was like, this is who I'm going to be. And I'm still trying to become, exactly who I want to be. But I think I'm on the right path, at least.
Before we get to the draft, I want to jump back. I want to jump back to two things about the bubble.
Uh-huh.
So, and this is a question for both of you guys. So
I also love what we're calling it, like the bubble.
Yeah. I mean,
I wish there was an
like.
I don't know. I actually don't know.
Really
I actually don't know what else to call it.
Yeah,
I wish there was an actual bubble. Like we just built a bubble for this thing.
Seriously, like no, we're all calling that. We're gonna look back on this time, and it's just absurd. But go ahead.
All right. So, if the NBA proceeds as planned, one of the things that has come out is that we are only going to get tested for PEDs. And Tommy, we haven't talked about this. This is like weeks old, maybe a week old news, but we haven't talked about it on the show yet. And I actually think this is a really interesting sort of test for NBA players to see if we can handle this. Because there's one specific drug that NBA players, not everybody NBA player, but one specific drug, and that's, marijuana. That we, some guys like to smoke marijuana. Yeah. We like to smoke weed.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? What percentage of the NBA do both of you guys think smokes marijuana?
90.
You think it's 90?
I'd say 80 to 90.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you say?
I'd probably say it's a little bit less than that.
Like what?
I think there's a lot of squares in the NBA.
Well, I'm
not saying
like
not smoking weed means you're a square.
I mean like would smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe 8. Yeah.
Yeah, not like
maybe
every
80.
single day. It's what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of guys that do that. I don't think
there's some though. There are a few.
There are a few.
No, yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we like as a players union, we've been like pushing for this specifically with marijuana. Like we should be able to, and other leagues have different drug testing policies. Other leagues, test for marijuana maybe once a season or twice a season. Generally speaking, they know when it's coming. But for us, it's always been like, you can't smoke marijuana in season. We're going to test you. It's going to be random. There are repercussions once you start failing tests. So I'm wondering if guys are going to be able to handle this and if guys are going to behave.
Honestly, I think they will. For a multitude of reasons, but probably my main one being like they're used to smoking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be an issue at all. And I think that after that, they'll be like, it's done that we are policing the smoking of marijuana. I have never caught marijuana in my life. Smoking weed so much. But like, yeah, I think it's fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal, like at all. No one is going to be, I don't know what NBA thinks. You're going to be so sluggish and you're not going to know that this is a basketball. Like, what do they think weed does to basketball players? You know what I mean? But I think it'll be totally fine. And I hope that it leads to them not really testing for weed.
I want to raise a question to both of you guys. Taylor, when we had Pat Connaughton on earlier this week, we basically...
Oh, Pat's great.
Yeah, we basically ran through all of these hypotheticals in the bubble about things like what do you do about girlfriends versus wives, all these different things. Mm-hmm. To your question, JJ, how are guys going to get weed?
Dude, this is all I've thought about for the last 24 hours.
They're not showing up to the bubble.
You're talking about 2 to 3 months. Right. No one's allowed in or out. Nobody's allowed in or out. So you're talking about a 2 or 3 months
supply. You can get deliveries, I'm sure.
Okay.
And maybe you better get your weed delivered. Or dudes will come with a stash.
It better be a big stash. It better be a big stash.
That's what I think.
Because I don't think, Taylor, I think I'm sure you can get deliveries, but my guess would be that there's like these security dudes who are watching everything that's coming through. And if it's like some dude on a bike with a bag of weed on his, like, they're going to be like, no, man, you're not coming through. I don't care. I don't care who called you. You're not coming through. So like, they better come with a stash.
Yeah. They will figure out how to smoke. That is for sure.
The rookies got to put it in their bags. That's on the team flight. Yes. The rookies got to put it in their bags. I'm actually a huge proponent of this for a number of reasons. Number one, I think marijuana should be legal, and I think we should not be testing for it in the NBA, period. But when I started thinking about this yesterday, like we all have some level of anxiety in general, and we all have some sort of performance anxiety. If we end up going to Orlando and have to be in this bubble for 2 to 3 months with everything going on, with our health at risk, away from our families, like anxiety could be peaking. This is, I think, a great move on the NBA's part to not sort of test for this. I think it's brilliant. I really do.
Yeah, and progressive. And like I said, I hope it's something that really just like lasts. People deal with things in different ways, and it's silly, I think, to police something like weed. The same way it's silly that it's legal in so many places now, but Black people are still in jail for weed. So this is a thing that should just across the board be decriminalized, and the stigma from weed should be taken away. But I'm with that. I'm with you totally.
The other thing too, it's interesting. So if there will be people that are uncomfortable with us talking about the use of marijuana. Tommy and we talk about drinking wine all the time on the podcast. Right. Wine is worse for you.
Absolutely.
Like alcohol is worse for you. So you nailed it. It is the stigma. Taylor, it is the stigma. It's the stigma of marijuana.
Because we watch NFL teams win the Super Bowl, be on floats, chugging beer from the crowd. It's like, woo, alcohol. And like, why do we do that with alcohol? And like, weed's such an issue. Like, the problems that are presented from alcohol are literally not problems with weed. Totally. Like, we just one day made a decision and stuck to it. That's one thing. Everything that people think, it was this decision someone made one day and we felt like that was it. And if we would all get out of that mindset of thinking that the way things are, the way things have to be, a billion things would change. Sure.
The second question I wanted to ask as we return back to this, to the bubble, this is a question for both of you guys. So what are you what would you be most fascinated about in the bubble? For me, it is like sneaking into or out of the bubble. Who's trying to get someone in?
Yeah.
And who's trying to get out? That to me is going to be the most fascinating thing.
That you took the best one, but there's
other ones. I mean,
but
The fans thing is going to be crazy.
That's the best one, but you can break it down into specifics. So it's not just who it's like what groupies are trying to get in. Who is
risking their life? Literally, who is risking their life traveling through Rona, like just to see some knucklehead boy? Yeah, like just to get into the bubble. That I'm honestly interested in the dynamics of like teams, right? Because we know there's a bunch of players that don't like each other, But how much interaction are you going to have with each other because you're all in this confined space? Who's going to hang out with who? Who's not going to hang out with who? Like, it's just going to be like the real world, I think.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways.
I'm interested in that too. That's a thing that Taylor, I know you've seen this a lot just being around different guys, but like I've seen this too. One of the things I'm always surprised by about the NBA in particular is how guys on other teams, like if they were friends when they were teammates or teammates in college or whatever it is, that's one thing. But there's not necessarily like, oh, you see each other out, so we're gonna go like talk and hang out. And it's not that they're like enemies or anything. It's just kind of like a weird standoffishness that exists
for sure,
where both of the people individually are good people. It's not like one of them's a jerk or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just this weird kind of awkwardness. And so that being when they're forced into a situation where you have to coexist could either be great or really awkward.
No, yeah, I'm so excited to see just like the friendship dynamics and how people handle that. I know like some guys, for example, don't even like when when a team comes to their city and they have a game the next day, they won't even go to dinner with the guys because they're like, I'm going to play you. A lot will, but it's just what's that going to be like? The competition, but also being with friends and being with people that maybe people think are your friends and they're not, and things like that. It's going to be interesting.
I hated Chris Paul.
Yeah.
Like I hated him. Tommy knows this. There's one NBA player that I hate still, but he's never been my teammate. So that's the thing with Chris. Like Chris hated me. Like I knew he hated me. I hated him. And then we were teammates for 4 years, and he's one of my best friends. Like I love the guy.
Yeah.
It's so weird how that works out. So it's gonna be interesting. I almost think, to your point, Taylor, about friendship. Like, will I make new friends down there? Like, will I?
Am I gonna come back from summer camp with the friends?
Yeah.
Do you think
All
there's,
right.
to that point, do you think there are inner internal team dynamics that this will help at all? Because you've been on a bunch of teams where there's been this version of awkwardness. Guys haven't necessarily hated each other, but they don't necessarily like get along because they don't have to hang out outside of games and road trips and stuff like that. Is there a world where, like, not to be like too Disney movie-ish, but it's like it's like Remember the Titans. It's like you're stuck there, and it's like, well,
you emerge as family.
You better figure it out.
My thoughts on that, and Taylor, you probably would know this as well as me. Like, I think the guys are gonna be in their if a guy is like a video gamer, he's gonna be in his room gaming. If a guy smokes, he's gonna be smoking.
Yeah.
If a guy golfs, he's gonna be golfing. For me, it's tough because I like going out to restaurants on the road. I'm not going to have that option, so I'm bringing a bunch of books basically.
I love
as
that.
Of right now, that's the plan.
Yes.
So. All right, we haven't done a draft in a few episodes.
Yes, let's do it.
And a power ranking. So we're going to do one.
I'm so excited.
So we've already explained the draft rules to Taylor, and we are going to draft both Taylor and Tommy were born in the 90s. They're 90s babies.
Woo, woo.
And we're going to draft our favorite movies from the 90s.
Yeah. Question
to both of you. As you were looking this up over the last day, were there any surprises about like, oh yeah, that movie was in the 90s, or was anything that like, oh man, I forgot about that movie. I know how good that was.
There were a couple early 2000s movies that like are movies I love that I was like, oh damn, I thought they were the 90s, but they were 2000s. But I feel like I have a pretty solid.
This is a tough ranking. There's a lot of options.
Yeah.
I will say this: we have to clarify that these are the most, at least to me, and tell me if I'm wrong with this. These are the most rewatchable, like your favorite movies, not the best movies. So like. I don't
favorite.
Like,
yes.
We're not putting like Schindler's List or Saving Private Ryan on this ranking, even though those are amazing movies that were made in the 90s, because you don't necessarily want to watch that 50 times over and over again.
I don't want to watch The English Patient more than once. Once was enough. Great movie, but once was enough.
Yeah, it's like it's our favorites. Like yes.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Taylor, why don't you start us off? I'll go next. Tommy, you'll be third.
Okay. I don't know why I'm nervous, but I'm legit nervous about this.
Don't be nervous, Taylor. One thing you have to know before we start: JJ is horrible movie taste. So there's no possible way. I have good movie taste. You're gonna see. There's no possible way that your takes are gonna be worse than his. So just go. You're good.
Okay. Cool. The Matrix.
It's a great first pick. That's a great. There's nothing. It's a great.
That's a great.
Okay, good.
It's a great first pick. A couple things on that. Number one, it was definitely in my top 5 on my big board, so I'm a little disappointed that you got that. And number 2, based on 2020, and many people know this, I did a whole presentation to the Sixers on simulation theory, but based on 2020, I do believe the chances have risen that this is not base reality and we are experiencing some simulation, i.e. the Matrix.
I'm with that.
But great first pick. All right. I want to get, so this is not necessarily my favorite movie, but it's in my top 3 of the 90s, but I'm going to take this one first and get it off the board because I don't want anybody to steal this movie. So my first pick is He Got Game.
Oof.
Oof. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
There's nothing, there's no debate.
I know.
There's no debate. And Tommy and I have talked about this before. Like, arguably, that movie should have been an Oscar nominee.
Yeah, no, I love it.
It's so good. It's
Crazy
so good.
was almost Stephon Marbury.
Yeah.
I think if
Kobe.
if that movie had come out post LeBron, it would have been an Oscar movie. It was ahead of its time. I think people didn't realize the dynamics at play of the high school to NBA pipeline. Yeah. And if it had been in like 2007, it would have been. My first is The Fugitive.
What?
I don't know if I love that.
Your first pick
JJ, we're both
is The Fugitive.
When's the last time you've seen The Fugitive? I think I've seen The Fugitive about 200 times.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
That was not it.
I stand by this pick. I'm taking... I'm going to Taylor. God. I always get shit for this and all. Every time we do a draft, I get shit. I'm not getting shit. I mean, I will get it, but I don't deserve it for The Fugitive because The Fugitive is an amazing movie. That's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2.
We're not saying it's not a bad movie, but that's not what this is.
You're going to see. Number 2. So I spent a lot of time thinking about this. I only wanted to pick one Scorsese movie. I think you can't do 2. I'm picking Casino over Goodfellas, which I caused a big thing on Twitter about this a couple weeks ago. A lot of people got mad at me, so they're going to get mad at me again.
I'm into
Goodfellas is great. Casino, I think, is like a top 2 or 3 most rewatchable movie of all time. And so that's my number 2.
I like it. That's a good pick. I like that pick better than The Fugitive.
The Fugitive was the Johnny Flynn pick, and then this pick was the Ricky Rubio pick.
I don't understand why you guys are hating on The Fugitive. You should both watch it tonight. Amazing movie.
It was also like the confidence that he said it with, like we were gonna love it, and me and JJ were like,
yeah, you might be losing your job on Monday after this draft. First of all, so the Scorsese thing. So Goodfellas, Casino, either choice, phenomenal. Yep. I thought about putting both those on my board, but for me, they're not a movie. They're like a once every 3 year movie.
Really?
They're Yes, they're phenomenal movies. I love both movies, but once every 3 years. Okay. My second pick. Again, I got 2 on here on my top 5 that you guys are just not going to pick. So I'm going to pick one that I love that I hope, I'm going to steal it before you guys get it. And that's Good Will Hunting.
Okay. It's a respectable pick.
It's a good movie. A little overrated to me.
It's respectable.
Yeah, it's fine.
You think Good Will Hunting's overrated? Okay.
To me, it's a tough rewatch. It's a controversial opinion. A lot of people like it. I'm not.
Okay.
All right, Taylor.
All right, I have to go Boys in the Hood.
Good
Great pick.
I was thinking about that. Classic.
I have to go Boys in the Hood.
Where do you stand on what's a better movie, Boys in the Hood or Menace to Society?
Oh, no one's ever asked me.
I just had this conversation. It's tough because they're both great.
I know, but I think I have to go Boys in the Hood. I think Boys in the Hood for me. What about you?
Boys in the Hood is a better fit for this list, I think, because it is even with the ending, it just is a classic. It's like one of the best movies of all time. Menace to Society, I think the first time you watch it is more powerful is the wrong phrase, but it's really striking the first time you see it. It's super well made. Okay. And so anyone who hasn't seen it should watch it because it's, especially now, it's very relevant to a lot of both of these are very relevant to a lot of things that's going on in the country. All right, you got another one.
Oh, I do too? Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, the snake. Okay. I'm gonna go Titanic.
Oh. Unbelievable.
My list is solid so far.
Your list is good.
Don't
Your list is good.
Me, please.
I was wondering if someone was going to pick Titanic. I really was wondering if somebody was going to pick Titanic.
I mean,
okay, fugitive, don't.
I watched the Titanic once. It was fine. It was like 9 hours long.
Oh man.
Did you follow this thing with Gone with the Wind? This controversy with Gone with the Wind? But
it's funny though, have this whole To America's thing, because you think I ever seen Gone with the Wind? I've never seen that movie. I know what it is. I know the iconic field. I haven't seen it.
It's literally like 5 hours long. Like you never will see it. You're just gonna live your life. You can watch. Yeah.
Have you guys have either of you watched The Wizard of Oz?
Yeah, I have seen The Wizard of Oz.
I like The Wizard of Oz.
Have you seen The Wiz?
Seen The Wiz also.
No.
Oh, you gotta watch The Wiz.
Is good too. Wizard of Oz. You should watch Wizard of Oz with your kids. They'll like it. Yeah. Don't watch Gone with the Wind with your kids. Right. They'll fall asleep.
Yeah, don't watch that.
All right, my third pick. This was an easy one. Starship Troopers.
Never seen it.
What?
You guys have never seen it?
I don't even want to shit on it. I just never seen it. Like
I've never seen it. Like I've never even heard of it. Yeah, have you heard of it?
I've heard of it.
It's a B movie. It stars the guy who stole Zach Morris's girlfriend in Saved by the Bell. The tall guy. He's got like, and then it's got Denise Richards in it. It's about like
fugitives looking better and better.
In the future, hold on. In the future, there's these giant arachnids that attack Earth, and they have to fly to the arachnids' home planet to kill like the main bug. It's not a good movie. It's a cult classic. Nope. Anyways, whatever. Right. I don't care. It's in my top 5.
All right. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, you got another one. Oh wait,
another one.
I have.
No, you have.
All right.
Yes.
Friday, no brainer.
Oh.
No.
Okay, but was that the 90s?
Yeah, 95. Friday, easy, no brainer, easy win, another win. And then the other one, which is going to be a little bit of a weird one, but I wanted to put in there because it's such a classic, is Home Alone. Because I watch it every year.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
I watch it every year, so that's on my list.
Why didn't I think of Friday? Why in my head was that 2000? Dang, that was a good pick. That's a strong pick with Friday. Okay. Is it my go? Yeah. Do I do one or two?
Wait, no, JJ.
My go.
JJ's
my go.
Okay, JJ. Okay.
It's my go. Okay. Man, you really, but Taylor, you really messed me up with the Matrix pick. Okay. Again, this is my top 5, and this is like a non-judgment zone. So my 4th pick is Swingers, which I hope that you guys have seen. No?
I haven't.
You should watch
Taylor,
it. It's good.
Okay.
Okay.
It's actually my favorite. It's my favorite movie ever. It's a young Vince Vaughn and a young Jon Favreau. It's like it cost them like $800,000 to make the movie. It's
super LA.
Anyway.
It's super LA. It's a
pick.
very like 90s LA movie.
I'm into that. Okay. I just haven't seen it, so I'm not going to judge it.
Yeah. All right. So
it's fair.
5-5. We're last one, right?
Taylor gets 4-5. Then I'd pick my 5th, and then time you get.
These are my final 2. Okay.
Yes.
So I have Boys in the Hood, Titanic, and The Matrix. I'm gonna go. This is so nervous. I'm gonna do Love Jones.
Okay.
And Shawshank Redemption.
Oh,
solid. Taylor
Great
has a
picks.
solid 5, honestly.
I think just because I hate all of Tommy's picks, I think you have picked the best
solid 5.
On paper,
Yeah.
the best 5. I know
Paper.
my enjoyment of my movies is gonna be fine. I'm gonna enjoy my movies. All right, my 5th one is I have to pick a Michael Bay movie. So it's either
I know, like Michael Bay, a must.
No, hold on. When I think of 90s action movies, I think of Michael Bay. I think of The Rock, Con Air, and Bad Boys. That's all I think of.
Okay. I hope you're picking Bad Boys.
Yeah.
And I'm picking Bad Boys. Bad Boys is my 5th one.
That's
for
fine.
sure.
Honestly, I was thinking about picking Con Air. Con Air is an amazing movie. My 5th is Liar Liar.
Good pick. That's a good. No, I like that pick. I like that movie.
I needed some comedies in there. See, JJ's the hater.
No, I just would not have of all the Jim Carrey movies. I wouldn't have picked
Starship Troopers.
All right, Taylor, I think you won this round.
Victory! I come to claim
This is what
victory.
happens. We invite people on the show and they just draft better than us consistently.
Oh man!
No, that was a really fun idea. I like that.
Oh man, it's great. All right, Taylor, I know you have to bounce. So we appreciate your time.
No,
You've been an awesome guest. This has been a lot of fun. You've educated me today, as you always do. You're always so well spoken. So thank you so much.
I appreciate both of you guys and just what you are doing in this space. I think it's so important and necessary. So keep going. I love the surge of like athletes doing media. It's my favorite thing. So I love it. I think you're incredibly talented at it. Tommy, me and you are cool, even though I haven't been invited to the dinners till now.
You're invited. You're invited now.
Yes. No, Tommy is like one of my favorite Twitter follows. So this is a good time. And thank you so much for having me on.